Hello people! Welcome to another edition of A Dose of Drew. Tonight is another knife review. I know we got a lot of them. It's quite the thing for videos, but right now it's one of the easiest things to do, so there'll be some more coming. And there is going to be others, but for right now, let's not talk about that. Let's get into the Vosteed Nightshade thumb hole. Nitro V, not the original CPM 150 or 154 CMs. So it is the Nitro V version in the blackout with the black, and that is some black micarta. I'm just going to say right now, that is dark micarta. That's not overdone green. That is some black micarta. All right. This does come in thumb hole, flipper, or thumb stud version. I like the thumb hole because, well, it is not bad and it does not in any way mess up the full flat grind or get in any way of anything. There's no anything, and there's no flipper tab to get in the way of the hand placement on a knife like this. Fantastic little bit. Let's get into some measurements here. First things first, it is a hard one to measure directly, but it is about 7.5 tip to tail. If you do it along the curve, it is only slightly longer at about 7 3/4. Blade length, approximately 3 inches, 3 3/8. Cutting length, 3 1/4 approximately. Right in that mid zone. Nice little bit. Overall, we're talking like, it is contoured, so we'll give it just a little bit. It's right around a 1/2 inch thick. Fairly thick for how narrow it is, which gives it lends it a better feeling in the hand than you might think. There's definitely some things on there. All right, couple other things here. Let's get the weight on this bad boy. Isn't the lightest, isn't the heaviest. It's actually in a fairly good mid-range. Just under 3 1/4 ounces, about 1 ounce per inch. Wonderful little ratio bits there. So it's at a decent weight for its size. It does have quite a bit of milling in there for weight reduction, which helps a lot. The micarta is thick and contoured, which is great. And, well, yeah, this is hard not to like. I gotta tell you. This is indeed something to enjoy. And that being said, it's really hard not to like this. There is so much about this to like. And before we get into the other comparisons, I just want to bring one out here because it'll come back later. And this is the mini Nightshade. There is a review up already on the channel for this one. A lot of the same things about this one can be said about this, but we'll get into that later. All right, other things first. It is nice all black copper, blacked out with just this nice little copper or brass sort of pivot ring. Very cool. Very flush. Gives you a nice place to pinch. It's not sticking up too much. It gives you a really nice positive place to grab. And without the flipper tab there, it is nice. But it also doesn't lend itself to direct size comparisons, and I'll show you about that right now. So this is a paramilitary 2, as you can see. It's not as long, but if you roll it, like, it gets close, right? Like, it's close. But then you look at it another way and you get the para 3 in here and it's almost exactly the same size. So it looks pretty much the same size as the para 3, lightweight in this case. But it has an overall curved length more similar to the paramilitary 2, which gives it a lot of the best of both worlds kind of things. For anyone who's an old Van Halen fan, yes, that song is awesome. All right, and it's just a blur. Once again, very similar, but just a little bit of short. But if you start rolling the curve, it gets almost the same size as the blur. And then not just any leak, but a random leak. And lo and behold, check that out. Little bit longer than the leak, almost the same width or height if you want to look at it this way, but massively thicker. So it is more hand filling than the smaller knives that you may be used to that look this narrow or short, whichever dimensional axis you want to call that. There's length, width, I guess, or height. Right now, looking at it this way, this is width and this is height off the table, but that's a whole different story. I'll keep going with height, and that's the height of the handle while it's in your hand, not height off the table. Just to maintain that standard. And compared to the bug out, similar size, in fact, a little bit longer. With all that belly gives it massive edge capacity. And this Avivi Elementum, it's actually longer than the Elementum with a lot more edge. Very, very cool in that respect. And of course, here it is next to my Wienar, and it may be longer, but my Wienar has that upward curve instead. Alrighty. All right, so let's get into the damn nice categories here for the design. This is a Shilin. I hope I'm saying that right, but it's a Taiwanese, prior to the Japanese invasion, World War I, World War II, and all that stuff. A Taiwanese knife style that's been classic for a long time. It's usually got a bolster that you can find it on there. I believe the company that has been making it for like 150 years, or the family, I should say, that owns the company is just about done making it, and that's sad to say because this is an incredible design type. There's some other ones that have been here that is not just the same, but let me do one more here, and that is the Vox Design Fox Knives. The Vox Knives Design Fox Knives Executed Chillin'. Another homage to the design. This handle is more like the traditional one that's been out there, whereas the Vox Design is an adjustment with this kind of handle, different from those. But the blade style, this one is more like the Bob Bloom version. It's an adjustment, but it's very, very much an homage. Whereas this is almost a straight up, I don't want to say copy. This is a much more authentic homage. It's much more like the original. And even with this little copper kind of, the black would have had black pins in the handle, much like a slip joint, and then a copper bolster on a lot of the original ones. And this little bit of pivot ring right there, I believe, is an homage to that design on these black ones here. And that is really cool to see. Very, very nice. And the design is classic and has been around and been used for a long time because this is awesome. This is a great user blade, user knife, user style. The curve fits in your hand very, very well. The ergonomics on the saber grip, it's weird to call it a saber grip, even though it does have a nice curved handle like one. Ergos on the saber grip, fantastic. Overhand pinch grip, glad there's not a flipper there. In fact, they even put jimping there, so you get just a little bit of grip because it is perfect to wrap your finger around. For me, the height of this is just enough for that knuckle. So I can get in there. There's a little bit there where I can catch my finger, but there's a little bit of space. Bigger fingers might get closer. You don't want to be jabbing too much. You do have a chance of running onto that and catching your finger and giving it a good slice. So it is a matter of being careful in this, but this is not about, stabby pokey. This is about slicing, cutting, and doing so many things. So this is based on a classic user design, not, looks good or we want to do self-defense. Yeah, you can, anything sharp and pointy you can use for self-defense, okay? So, as they say in John Wick, you can kill a man with a pencil. It doesn't have to be a knife. That's beside the point. Because this is fantastic on the ergonomics. The cutting profiles, the way it's used, right? So you get the overhand, you can come back and get that drop thing makes it a chopper. If this was a big old blade out here, this would be a chopper. It's got this saber type handle that would allow you to just really get a lot of leverage on the slash and the slice. It like how a recurve draws things into the curve. That low angle means that when you cut into stuff, it draws anything flat is pulled into the blade and gets even more. Instead of you having to angle your hand down, you can hold it straight and do exactly what you want while your fingers are off and pull it into the blade. Very, very nice. Same with the saber grip where you're going through. You can have your hand out of the way and still cut. This curve is great for keeping the hand out of the way while still being able to use it. Not quite as much for food prep, but you do have the ability to do scoring cuts. And it has this angle. And this is something I really want to talk about because it's in the chillin'. It's in the mini Nightshade, and it's, you hold the handle and the thumb points towards the tip. Exactly. On all of them. One of the beauties of this design, and I would imagine, I have never handled one of the originals, but I would imagine the originals have that same thing. This is beautiful in that sense. This is great, and you have tons of room. Even on the, I have to spread my fingers apart to the point of where it's comical to where I have to, my hand doesn't fit. Great on the design. I would love to, I mean, it's a great adaptation here by Vosteed. But the homage is, the original design is really that good, and this homage really just captures what makes that original so good. And that goes with the aesthetics. It looks like it's not the hugest knife. There's a lot of things that are bigger. In fact, I'll even pull the old Para 3 out, because it may look like it's got a lot of lump, but it's still fairly, it's still a good 1/4 inch, maybe shorter than the Para 3. All right, so you can see right there. So it's got not a, even though it's got a nice bit of curve, the cupping of the blade like that really gives it a nice profile. And this is fairly narrow, so it makes it seem larger than it may in otherwise or in hand. But the aesthetics of it are great. It's you don't mistake it. It's a great knife. It's not the lightest thing, and it may not be as small or useful. Like this is one of the best 5th pocket knives out there. This is really, really nice. And there's even an S35 VN version, which I don't have right here. Oh, maybe I do. Let me double check that. All right, so those of you who are waiting, sorry for the pause there. But yeah, just to give you an idea, this is such a great design. I did indeed buy both versions of it because this is fantastic. I really, 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 really want to swap those back spacers and pins. But to be perfectly honest, the silver on this one is one of my favorite little aesthetic designs. Very, very classic. But that's not this knife. So let's get back to this one. I think it looks great. It fits in the pocket very well. Has a nice blade that doesn't, it looks knifey, but it looks so much like a tool. This doesn't scream, oh, I want to, you know, defend myself with blades and I'm tactical and all that other stuff. It just doesn't do that. This looks like something you need to use, and the lines are so smooth, for lack of a better term. It just smoothly blends in and comes in and has these nice arcs with a couple of cutouts, but it just looks good. And with that tall blade and everything, it has a whole lot else. In fact, getting into the mechanics of it, we will get on some of these measurements on this. 117 thousandths, 118 would be 3 millimeters. So we're pretty close there. It's pretty much a 3 millimeter thick blade. A little bit of grinding on it. See if I can't get right behind the edge here. That's pretty thin. That's got, no, that's in fact. I actually think I'm a little bit below the edge. 12.5 thousandths. Right? 13 to 12.5 thousandths. Let's see if it gets even lower. I'm right on the tip. Oh, no, I went below. So 13 thousandths behind the edge. That's ridiculously thin behind the edge. Very slicey, right? Extraordinarily slicey on this Vosteed knife. 13 thousandths behind the edge. Pretty amazing, right? Like that's really thin. And let's talk about that for a moment in a whole different way. Like, I don't even know if this does justice. So I'm going to trying to, so not only is it sharp out the box, it is very slicey, and that thinness behind the edge, as you can see, takes very little effort to move. Very well apexed from the factory, and extraordinarily thin behind the edge. That is very, very, very thin behind the edge, and that lends itself to sliciness very good. On the mechanics of the sliciness on that part, and it is on bearings, and it is a liner lock, and it is pretty good on the action. A little bit of shake just kind of moves it, and again, like so many others, bigger shake will close it, but it's really easy to control. Very fluid, linear, and manipulable in its action. And that's pretty good. And by linear, I mean, if I move it just a little bit, if I do it just a little bit, it moves just a little bit. If I do it harder, it moves more. It's proportional. It's directly proportional to the amount of effort I give for it to go through. It's around a curve, so it's not exactly linear, but we'll get back to that. So the mechanics are actually pretty great on cutting, and the aesthetics, very, very good on that. And one of the noteworthy points on this is it's cheap. It's not totally cheap. It's in that $70-something mark. It's right around there. It's not the cheapest thing out there, but it's really well done. And that's starting to become, look, inflation's going to change everything. If you're expecting there to still be a $30 to $50 bargain and then everything's going to be $70 to $90, it's not going to be like that anymore. $30 stuff's going to start becoming, the 420HC. $50 stuff's going to start becoming the D2s and 8CRs. And the $70 mark is going to start becoming more of these. And then you'll start looking at the $100 mark for some of the lower end powder steel and all that sort of stuff. This is how it's going to play out, just as a matter of cost and adjusting the current cost price due to inflationary pressures in the market. Yeah, things will come back down, but for certain things, depending on where they're made and all that sort of stuff and where the materials are sourced from, it's still going to stay that way. So, little macroeconomics there thrown in with the knife stuff. And one of the noteworthy points is this is based upon a classic and well-loved, and deservedly so, design. And it does it well. Its intended purpose is to be an EDC. And I honestly believe part of its intended purpose is to bring more light to this design, to the Taiwanese design that this is based upon. And I say Taiwanese, not Chinese or Japanese. This was a design made by Taiwanese people back when it was still part of China. And was traditional to them. Made it through Japanese, what's it called? The Japanese invasion and occupation, the political upheaval of the Communist Party and pushing everyone there. It's suffered a lot, and they still kept making these. It's really sad to me that 2023 might be the last time they do, but I think part of that is what this seeks to alleviate, and that is getting more of the public out there to know that there's such a thing as a custom or a builder that makes these in a traditional sense. It may even be a slip joint, if I'm not mistaken. And that's between those noteworthy points stuff, it's there. And one of the things I'm going to say may or may not be an intended noteworthy point is just how good this thing is at EDC daily tasks. And by that I mean, this is a package piercer. That tip is very robust, yet pointy, and that gets thin behind the edge, and so it is a slicey, pokey thing, and so it is a package piercer. A saran wrap or shrink wrap slicer, absolutely. It'll go through the thick stuff real nice with that thin edge, and that belly and the angle will help you control it. Even the hard stuff where you usually use scissors, this will actually do pretty good. It keeps it out, so you're not going to and suddenly cut out of the package. It really does quite well at that. And a cardboard carver, you better believe it, taking the overhand and just going down some cardboard. Do I have anything that can... I don't know if I do. Boy, just... Why is it that I had to take all the papers out before I do a video? My gosh, what am I going to do here? Well, anyway, Don't have any of the thick paper straight, but it goes through it just like the other paper. It doesn't take much effort. It's fairly thin blade stock. It's not the thinnest. It could be a little bit, but it's still pretty good, especially for the height here. And man, does that just right out here is definitely the sweet spot, and it just peels through cardboard, curving cuts, everything. Straight cuts as good, straight as you can do it with your hand, and it'll do it all. And the envelope eviscerator or rope cutting, where you roll it over and you can go into it. You can slice open an envelope or anything like that. In fact, I may have. You go in and, right? It does it great. Rope cut. And you get a loop and pull it in there, and you roll your hand so you can. Normally, you have to tilt your hand back and then pull. And this thing, you can just grab it and literally tilt your hand back, and it will pull. That curve lends itself to those kind of tasks incredibly well. And that's where I get to the cost to value ratio. This is a very great knife. But, and this is where I go, you get other ones out there. Kubi, let's just say for one. I have this is a review I've done already. $50. There's several others out there in that $50 to $60 range. I'm not saying that the Vosteed's not worth it. It's just in an incredibly competitive place. And when these two things are going for nearly the same price, we'll get into that part next, because this is a great cost to value ratio. It really is. But first of all, small knife is approximately the same measurement this way, but it's so much thinner across. Part of that's the nested liners, right? It's G10 and all that stuff. And that would be part of the I expected this to be good. I got this, the Nightshade, because of the mini Nightshade. So the mini Nightshade impressed me massively and convinced me to buy the large one. So I was expecting it to be good, and I was not disappointed. Let me take that back. I was expecting it to be great. I really was. I'm like, the mini was so good. And it's not that it's not great. It's just less great than the mini for several reasons. If you don't like small knives, that's fine. Outside of the size, if you pulled the mini up to the same size, I would like it better. Let's talk about why. Because that's the requests. 1, thin blade stock, fantastic. 2, heavily contoured. So is this, but heavily contoured. 3, proportionally, this front part is wider. If you were to increase everything at the same bit, right? I need to increase this another 10 or 20%. I need to increase this, approximately 15 to 20%. You would need to increase this height approximately the same. And if you did that, you would have enough room for another crossbar lock, which is what I would request for this. If there's one thing that I think would make this Nightshade that much better, it would be to modernize it with a crossbar lock. To do to this what you did to this. Because honestly, there's so much to like. I don't do a button lock. My God, please don't do a button lock. Breed the raccoon with the mini Nightshade, right? And bring that. That would be my request to make this knife better. It's not that it's bad, right? This is a 4-star knife as it sits. I hate to only give it that. This is right up there, on a numerical. I really need to get like a 100-point scale or something like that instead of 5, but because that way it gives you much more granularity as opposed to this. But it's a matter of nuance and degrees of better as opposed to leaps better. And I like the liner lock, but the inability to use nested liners while giving it a thicker bit in the hand, a slight widening right here, keeping the same choil idea where you can put your finger right here and having something similar, but being able to boop, like I want to do that. so bad instead of that. Instead of the double clutch to just boink on a crossbar lock. Not a button lock. That is part of what makes the mini Nightshade so fantastic. It's thin, it's slim. The blade stock is 14C28N. Nice, right? Nice steel. Nitro V is basically 14C28N with a little bit of vanadium. So there you go. It's not, either one's pretty good to me as far as that goes. And things like the aluminum backspacer, you get this nice styling in there. I love the homage, and I don't want to change this, but if there was a Nightshade 2, make it a crossbar lock. Give it just that little bit of thickness right here, or pull it back, or whatever you need to do, extend that line. I don't want to extend the line too much, because then you start getting weird cutouts that look strange when it closes. And one of the nice things about this is clean lines. Get it wider, you can almost, right, there's a lot of things you can do to try and bring that in, but really, crossbar lock like the mini. That's the biggest request. Did I spend too much time on that? Maybe, but I really want to put it, because this is a 4 to 4.5 star knife, really good. The homage and the design is excellent. The execution of this design is fantastic. This is a well-built knife. The action, the mechanics, everything about it, from the design to mechanics, very, very well done. And the design itself is not new, but the ability to maintain a lot of stuff that makes such a classic knife good and bring it into a folder like this is nice. And it is, for many of the same reasons, the Chillin' is a favorite of mine, so is the Nightshade. This is a great design and a great little knife. So, bringing this all together, because this is most definitely a package piercer, saran wrap slicer, a cardboard carver, and an envelope eviscerator extraordinaire. It is damn nice, to the tune of 4+ stars, maybe not quite 4.5, a little bit low on the cost of value, and really a crossbar lock would knock this one out of the park. Yeah, of course I would love to see steel. I'm fine with 154 cm instead of Nitro V, but this is fine too. It's really thin behind the edge, so tough steels are very, very important to have there, so that's great. 14C28N or Nitro V for me, both good. New Jersey Steel Baron is very happy when you do Nitro V, that's for sure. And the cost to value ratio isn't bad, right? It's not bad. It's like $70. So this is, there might be a couple bucks difference in there, but really a $70 folder with this level of quality and usability is pretty nice in this day and age. So it's hard to really complain too much about that. And that's where I'm going to leave it, because this is a fantastic knife. And it's well worth your money. If you haven't already bought one, you looked at the mini Nightshade, or you've seen it, you're like, how good is that? Look, this is great. This is well worth the buy. This is an easy single, if you're like, I just need one pocket knife. Great. You don't want something this small, but you like kind of the idea behind it, or you like the curves or the design or whatever it is, this won't disappoint. Like, if you have never seen this before and you're looking at it going, wow, that looks kind of cool, let me tell you, this is a fantastic design. It is great for the saber grip, and it is fantastic for the overhand grip, or if you will, foil, right? But it's just sideways for a foil. Don't really have the epi. Anyway, but yes, so really, really good. And this is running a little long, but I want to make sure and give this its due, because the Nightshade is a fantastic little knife. And with that, I'm going to end this video. Highly recommended. Well done, Vosteed, on this particular Nightshade. I like the thumb hole version. Yeah, it's kind of the oval, a lot like an awful lot like a Voxnays design, but it is not exactly. It's a little bit different on the size and proportions and all that sort of stuff. So it is a little bit different. And honestly, if I was going to tell you to do anything with it, I would tell you to change the angle of that so that that top matches right there instead of keep it there. So that I can get, so that this pointing here points up a little bit. So when I put my finger in there, it is already up at the top. All right. I think that would be just a little bit, it's really a nitpicky thing. This isn't bad or anything like that, but if that eyeball was kind of pointing up a little bit right now, it kind of looks like a sad orca. But I'm going to go ahead and finish that right there. Sad orca is probably one of the last things I thought I would ever describe a knife as. But well done, well worth the money, highly recommended. The Vosteed Nightshade. And with that, you guys, go ahead, take this video, watch it twice, comment as much as you like, be mindful of side effects, remember to like and subscribe. This has been your dose of Drew. I am said Drew, and you guys have a great rest of your night.